I just released some new music and I wanted to take some time to talk about the concept, the themes, and show a little bit of behind the scenes production. This release is called Steel, and it's 4 tracks that are largely about kind of overlapping themes of class division, artificial intelligence, and the way it's imposing upon humanity. Typically when I release new music, it's kind of this big build-up, and I'll submit my tracks on Submit Hub, and I invest a lot of time and money into a sort of like release plan. I have decided that I don't really want to do that anymore. Artists are constantly having to fight to have their work seen and heard, and I honestly just don't really want to participate in that rat race, because my creativity is something that is fulfilling for me on like a deep level, and to take my art form and try to like optimize it by getting it in front of as many people as possible just doesn't really feel appealing to me. Instead, I want to take the time to talk about this project to people like you who are here because you want to be. This release, like all of my other music, is on all streaming platforms, but I'm really trying to move towards promoting Bandcamp pretty exclusively, just because it's a fairer platform for artists and they're not actively promoting ICE. My creativity often functions in a way where I get really immersed in one thing at a time and I need to see it through, and then I can very quickly shift my attention to the next project. In this instance, Steel was a project that I created in about a week, maybe 2 weeks. At the time, I was watching a lot of sci-fi movies and I was thinking a lot about the experience of just being adrift in the cosmos, knowing that your death is inevitable and very isolated. I was thinking it might be interesting to share some of the initial notes that I took while I was writing these tracks, because when I reached out to the artist who did my album art, John, of Permian Designs, I wanted to give him as much context as possible, and I just think it's kind of interesting to share some of this stuff behind the scenes, because often we don't know how other people go about creating and sort of building out a concept. There's a track on the EP called Far, and it's my favorite track on there. And my notes, here's what my notes say. It's like you're getting a peek into my brain. I wrote this largely about the increasing instances of natural disasters and our short-sighted response to climate issues. I imagined a family confronted with the complex decision of whether or not to flee from wildfire and drought. This track is a critique of the misalignment in class response to disaster, but also the distinct reactions of human versus non-human animals. The rich can flee in their private jets or build bunkers, all which further destroy the landscape. Thus, they catalyze the very conditions they must flee from. Another overarching theme is sort of this convergence of religion and artificial intelligence. So I'm really interested in technological determinism, not because I subscribe to that belief or that theory, but because I just find it fascinating that humans are so obsessive around technology and so willing to succumb to structural coercion in the face of technology. One of the tracks, Steel, the title track, is sort of this atheistic hymn about AI becoming cognizant of the fact that it was created by a god whose only intention was to use it as a form of optimization and to enhance efficiency. I guess it's interesting to consider a reality wherein human beings meet God, if God really exists, only to find that said God created us for the sole purpose of enslaving us. Typically, my creative process when it comes to producing music and writing lyrics and all of that stuff is very stream of consciousness. I don't like to spend a ton of time in a track. I know some people will make sure everything is perfect and quantized and pristine, and that's just not really my approach when it comes to producing. I really like background sounds. I don't mind including messy takes. I think it adds character, and so if you're someone who's interested in production and maybe you're new to it, or maybe you've been doing it for a long time but you're like seeking new ways to move outside of the box, I would just recommend sitting down and giving yourself the challenge of just completing a track quickly. Because I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in gear and fixate over having the best software, feeling like you need to unplug the refrigerator in order to do a vocal take. These things are not necessary. These are preferences. These are choices that you can make because you have free will. And for me, I don't feel the need to really modify my surroundings. And if I happen to pick up a little bit of audio from outside my window or like the humming of the refrigerator in the background, I just see that as capturing reality. I'm capturing the moment as it is rather than isolating myself away from the environment. Okay, so with all of that said, I want to take you into Ableton and show you some stuff. So we've got Ableton opened up, and this track is called Not Enough Oxygen, and this song is very inspired by space and sci-fi. I wanted to find sounds that really emulated that sort of feeling. I'm gonna click through some stuff so you can hear and just get a sense of what's going on. Spooky. All of these synthy parts were played in using the Arturia Mini Lab. This is the MIDI controller that I use, and a lot of these sounds are coming from Analog Lab, which is also software from Arturia. For the drum tracks, I kind of approached this the way that I would if I were using hardware. In this instance, I did not use my drum machine. These are all programmed in using Ableton kits. This particular kit here, the Gale kit, this is actually comprised of found sounds that I recorded on my iPhone in my old apartment. And it's really interesting being able to have this sort of essence of a place that I used to live in. And these found sounds are also in a lot of the tracks on my album Hybrids. Neat. I like the quality of these sounds, and then I was able to go in and kind of tailor each individual sound to my liking. You can see that I've kind of programmed everything in here. As a vocalist, first and foremost, I have the most fun just layering a shit ton of vocals on top of each other. There are a lot of instances of reason rack effects on these vocal tracks, and I also use shifter quite a bit, which is an effect that allows for pitch and frequency modulation. So you'll hear that a lot throughout this EP, where it sounds like I'm accompanied by a male version of myself, and I just really like that effect. It kind of reminds me of some of the Knife's music, which I'm a big fan of. Their vocal production is always really interesting. Let me show you another track. I'm going to show you my favorite track. It's called Far. It's really a very simple track. There's only 2 synth parts. You can see I've got some drums going on, and then this track is predominantly vocals. Here's the first synth part. And then the second synth part. I'm just going to isolate all of the drums. So you can see I basically just loop a bar and then just program the drums in. And then let's listen to some vocals. So again, I used a lot of shifter here, and now I just want to show you part of the track as a whole. I don't know if this is interesting to anybody. I guess I just thought it'd be kind of fun to break down some of my process and how I produce and create music. I just want to encourage you to not get too caught up in the weeds and to not focus too much on rules. I've always been really drawn to like experimental, outside of the box music. The sort of range of things that I tend to listen to is anywhere from progressive metal to very like avant-garde, electronic, kind of chaotic music. I'm sharing all of this because my hope is that I can remind you that you don't really need a ton of hardware. You don't need to spend a ton of money. The mini lab cost me like $50. It came with software. Obviously, an Ableton license is a little bit spendy, but it's well worth it. You can also produce music in a number of other software. You know, you could use something like GarageBand, and maybe it's limited in some senses, but if you're just starting out and you're interested in just exploring sound, there's nothing wrong with starting from the ground up. And like I said earlier too, like I've created drum kits out of found sounds in my apartment. So the potential to create something interesting is abundantly available. And instead of getting too fixated on following rules and buying gear and things like that, just sit down and make something. Just create something because it's fun and because it feels good. For me, starting out with music production, I felt like there were specific rules I had to follow, and there's a lot of gatekeeping, especially as a woman doing music production. It feels like there's a ton of gatekeeping. So I just want to empower those of you out there who are interested in production and just music in general to just give it a stab. And with any creative pursuit, you're going to create things that other people are not going to like. And people will be critical of what you create if you share it publicly. And that's okay. Because there are people out there who will resonate with what you're making, even if it is really outside of the box or weird, or if you break every single rule that you're supposed to follow. If you listen to this release, I would greatly appreciate it if you let me know what your favorite track is. It's always kind of cool to see how other people receive art that you put out into the world. So I'm just curious to know how this lands with folks. I'll make sure I put a ton of links in the description for everything. I also want to shout out C-Wraith. They were my mastering engineer and they did an incredible job. I just absolutely suck at mastering, so greatly appreciative for their help with this. Another huge shout out to my friend Permian Designs for doing the album art for this release, as well as basically all of my releases. His work is incredible and I highly recommend you go check out his page. I've been working on a bunch of fun stuff. I have some new prints that'll be in the shop in the next week or two, and I'm also in the process of publishing my very first zine, which I plan on making a video all about, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, create more than you consume. Thanks for being here, and I will talk to you next time. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Bye!